Hi Homeworthy, I'm Sarah. Welcome to our historic Sullivan's Island home.
You're watching Homeworthy, where we believe every home has a story. Before today's episode, click the join button below to support all of the storytelling we do on this channel. Our growing community of members help to directly fund more videos so we can capture these extraordinary homes from around the world. So join today to receive early and exclusive access to new Homeworthy videos.
Hi, I'm Sarah Heckler. I'm an interior designer, and we are here in Sullivan's Island, South Carolina. We've lived here on Sullivan's Island for about 7 years. We moved here from New York. I lived in New York City for about 17 years, and my husband was born and raised there. We had our daughter in New York, and when we were trying to raise a family, she was 2, my husband and I realized that New York probably wasn't going to be the best place for us to raise our family, have another child, and things like that. So we started looking around the country and we landed on Charleston. We love the history here in Charleston. We love the food scene, the architecture. It punched all the tickets for us, and we thought this could be a great option for us. So what drew us to this home was the historic nature. This house was built in 1894 by the Army. There's a series of houses on our block. There's 11 homes. They were all built by the Army in the late 1800s. I think a couple of them maybe in the early 1900s. And they're very, very similar. They all look similar, but yet slightly different. And they were built for the officers during the war. There was an active Army base here on Sullivan's Island. It was an open Army base. The fort was called Fort Moultrie, and its sister fort is Fort Sumter, which you may have heard of. So our house was part of this fort, and there was other houses called the Sergeant's Quarters, which are also on Sullivan's Island, and they're, I would say, probably the oldest houses on the island. And next door to us is actually apartments that was the bachelor's condos for the unmarried men. They would live there, and our house would host 2 families, 2 officers and their families. We looked primarily in downtown Charleston when we moved here. Our real estate agent took us touring downtown. We thought we had our sights set on downtown. We were city people. We thought we're gonna move from a big city like New York to a small city like Charleston. And it turns out that we saw this house on Zillow, and we kept asking our agent, we love this house, where's this house? It's in a town called Sullivan's Island. I've never heard of that before. So she told us that she would take us there, even though we weren't sure if we were beach community people. And we walked in and we knew this was it. We really did. We knew this was our house. We had to have it, and we negotiated on it and bought the house a few months later. Welcome to our foyer. There's a few things in here I wanted to talk about. One of my favorite things in the foyer is this credenza. I designed and had this built by a woodworker local here in Charleston. His name is Scott Mira. It has really easy slides here for the doors. And when you open up one of these doors, you see we have dovetail joinery and sliding drawers that pull out. This piece was designed by myself, but I was inspired by a designer named Jean Prouvé, who's a French architect and designer from the 1940s, where he primarily made furniture. I love his work. I always wanted one of his pieces. And unfortunately, the scale of furnishings from the 1940s wasn't as tall or grand as I had wanted to fit the foyer. So I thought, why not just build a piece to fit the scale of the house? This is much taller than a standard credenza. And one of the other elements is these doors are brass. So this is a blackened brass finish that was applied to the wood doors. Another thing you'll see on the credenza is this little stack of books, and one of these books is actually a book that was written by my mother-in-law, Audrey Heckler. She has a very large art collection of outsider art, and if you flip through, it's a complete book of all of her work, and she discusses all her pieces in there, which is pretty awesome. And another thing which I think is funny is my kids do Legos all the time, and I just love this little Lego vase that my daughter did to show off her little flowers here. We have this really incredible dome. It's a 19th century glass dome. A friend of mine, Dawn Nakamura, is an artist here on Sullivan's Island as well, and she builds these domes that encapsulate shells and butterflies. So this is one of her pieces, and we'll see another one of her pieces in another room of my house later on too. What I love most about our house is probably the high ceiling heights and the ceilings themselves. I can't wait for you guys to see that. The ceilings are incredible. There's so much detail in every single room of this house. The home itself has such grand presence with the high ceiling heights. The scale, the doorways, the sliding doors, which you'll see as well. There's a lot of history just in the bones of this house. If you take a look up the stairwell, you'll see my 3 floors of stairs and all the ceilings that go up. Every ceiling has details printed and stamped in tin. The story as it goes, or what I was told, is when the house was built in the late 1800s, the war began and the cannons would fire off and shake down the plaster moldings that they had originally put up in the house. So in order for that not to happen and the ceilings to crumble and fall, they opened up a tin shop on Sullivan's Island and hand pressed all the tin and used that as the ceilings for all of the officers' quarters. So our house has tin ceilings in every room of the old structure, and every ceiling has a different print and relief. We have a lot of black and white in the house, so the walls are primarily white on the first floor and second floor. We have a couple bits of color, but very subdued color. Nothing bright or shocking, easy on the eye. I really like warm color, warm palette, and to make it feel inviting. The chair in the corner is an old antique office chair that was my husband's, and we just thought it looked cool sitting here underneath this painting and piece of art. It just feels like a place to sit if you want to take your shoes off or whatever. Again, from the original structure of the house, we have this huge double door, and during the war they would have put up these bars that cross the door like this. You would slide it in here, and it almost barricades the door and locks it and gives it extra security. I would say all of the doorways on the first floor, actually, and the second floor, have these bars that go across, and I think that's a really cool element that is from the original part of the house and built when it was built by the Army. The light fixture in the foyer is something that's unique as well. To me, it sort of looks like a sea urchin, something like that. And we do live at the beach after all. So this was selected and hung here. It's really large in scale, and the colors pair well nicely back to the oil rub bronze things that we have, or the brass things in the house, and it's kind of just a big statement piece, while it also has a lot of light bulbs, so it does provide some light as well. Welcome into my formal living room. I'm going to take you in here, and one of the things that I want you to especially see is this really cool floating coffee table. This is a piece that we had custom made. This table is a few hundred pounds. When we moved here from New York, our movers they were not happy with us. One of the things that makes it look like it's floating is we had an acrylic base created for the bottom of the table. That way it's clear and you don't see see how it sits on the ground. A few pieces that I have on the table are this really cool bowl. It's porcelain. It's also done by a local artist here in Charleston. Her name's Maria White. She works primarily with porcelain, and she had this 24 karat gold paint that she rimmed the edge of the bowl with, and I think it just adds a little something special and shiny to it. We like to keep a lot of art books around our house, and this one sitting here actually is the history of Sullivan's Island right on top. It was one of the first books we bought when we came here because we were so fascinated with the history of the island. Another thing I wanted to point out in here is on our sofa, you see these white oak carved legs. I had mentioned in the foyer that I love the designer Jean Prouvé. One of his signature styles is to do a sloped triangular leg on his furniture. So we had the sofa custom made to fit our space, and had a woodworker carve the legs to look like a Jean Prouvé style leg. So, and the style of the fabric and everything almost makes it feel a bit mid-century as well to go with the design. As we walk around, you may notice we have a lot of artwork hanging on our walls, photography, paintings, and things like that. My husband and I love to collect art. He especially. One of his favorite photographers is Stephen Shore. So you'll see here a photograph by him here and here on this wall too. These were taken in the I would say 1970s. So I think they fit with a cool mid-century style of some of the pieces in our home as well. Also in this room, we have a painting that was done by my daughter when she was 3 years old. So we have professional photographers as well as some art by our kids too. Another thing I can show you here in our living room is little knickknacks we like to keep around. This glass jar right here, for example, is just filled with shark's teeth. We live at the beach. My kids love to collect shark's teeth. They're wandering around or going to Morris Island or other places where they can collect shark's teeth. Because we have really high ceilings in our house, it is really important to come up with light fixtures that work really well. So this is a light fixture that's pretty large in size, and it's made of cocoa beads, which I think is really special because it kind of adds a little bit of island flavor back to a house that doesn't feel so beachy. Over here on this side of the room, we have these cool plastic molded chairs with a wool fabric. And I think it's cool to add this element of modern furniture to a historic house. I love the juxtaposition of the two kind of going together. So here's an example of that, I would say. And now I'll take you into my formal dining room. But before I show you around in here, I want to point out the sliding doors that you'll see all around our house. These are also original to the home. They're incredibly thick, over 2-inch thick solid wood doors. They're really, really heavy, and we don't move them very often because of that. But they connect all the rooms on the downstairs floor. So we decided to paint all the doors in our house Charleston green. They look black, but there's a slight green undertone to them. I think it draws your attention to them. You notice the details, they're different from the walls. They become something that's eye-catching, and the doors themselves have so much presence and interest that it's something I want you to notice. The height of them is really tall, and you just wouldn't see doors like this in a house built today. As I mentioned earlier, you would see a lot of artwork throughout our house. This is one in particular I wanted to point out. This is a reproduction of a Degas, but it has a cute little story behind it. This came from my husband's grandmother. This was hanging in her apartment in New York City, where he grew up and where she lived. And his whole life, he thought this was a real Degas painting. And I think his mom even thought it was real too. So after she passed, they went through all of her belongings and discovered that this was not real. And they still offered it to him and asked him if he wanted it, even though it was a fake. And in the end, of course he wanted it. It was his grandmother's, it was sentimental, and he always, used to look at it when he was at her apartment hanging out with her. You'll see a lot of fireplaces in our house. We have 5 operating fireplaces that are original. One of the unique things about them is they have these mirrors above them on a few of them. And sort of columns, all original tile, things we've never replaced. We have painted them, but not replaced anything on the fireplaces. And just keep some knickknacks, candles, flowers, photographs, decorative elements around them. But it is a unique feature of the house to have 5 working fireplaces in one home. During the 1800s, early 1900s, there wasn't any heating and air conditioning, so they would use the fireplaces to heat the home, and the wraparound porches of the house would keep the house cool in the summer. As we're moving through the dining room, I want to point out the dining table and chairs. We had these chairs, they're vintage. They are rebuilt and varnished. We had them brush and darken the metal frame and upholstered them in a light colored leather. This kind of gives a more of an antique quality to them, as well as the table itself. The base of the table are brass legs that are antique. They are burnished brass and they're darkened to make them look older with age. And then on top, we had this really heavy, I guess we like heavy things, glass table cut for the top. It's about 1 inch thick, solid piece of glass to kind of give it that illusion of water almost sitting on these table bases. The candelabra here is another antique piece. My husband, he got that from an art show somewhere along the line, I'm not sure. But it just adds a nice, it ties the whole table and the pieces together for us. As you can see, we have bookcases in our dining room. I don't think that's a very typical thing to do. I think at one point this room was not used as a dining room. It was possibly used as a secondary sitting room or office for the officers that lived here. So you can treat these rooms how you will for today's living. We came from New York with a lot of books. So we have these bookcases here filled with tons and tons of little antiques, knickknacks, and hundreds of books. I'll take you over here to this cool little bar cart. This cart is a piece that my husband got from his father. It's an antique piece by a designer named Edward Wormley, and it was made in the mid-1950s. This side over here opens, so it extends, which is really cool, so you can have more bar space if you're having a party. And you've got your cabinet, things for your wine or other liquors. And above that, we have a painting by Calder from the 1940s. So we have a lot of different mixes of art in our house. Next to the bar cart, we have this table, which we used in New York for a different reason, but when we moved here, we thought this is a great opportunity to put in the corner. So if we're hosting in our dining room, we have additional seating, we can move the table out, we can serve food from here. So for now, we have it here with these fun, funky, red leather upholstered vintage chairs and this cool black table. Again, you'll see the black color, just pops of that coming throughout with another black and white photograph that we have in the home. My path to interior design was an interesting one because I started as a model when I was 14. I traveled the world. I lived primarily in Paris. I lived in Milan, Tokyo, Australia, Miami, LA, New York. I lived in New York for cumulatively 17 years. And that was my career. At the middle of my career, I went back to school. I went to Parsons School of Design. And originally I had wanted to be a fashion designer, but when I was working as a model, I discovered that I saw the industry inside and out. I saw every aspect. I saw how it would be like to be a designer and what they went through. And I realized, I think I just like clothes a lot more than I like to be a designer. So I chose my path to be an interior designer at that time. After I finished Parsons, I started working for a designer who was actually my studio teacher in New York. She was an incredible designer. She took me under her wing and she was my mentor. She showed me everything about the industry. She taught me how to do my billing, my my sourcing, custom furnishings, custom draperies, everything I needed to know, I learned from her. And I'm grateful for that. So when I had my daughter, I left working for her and I started my own business. So I've had my company, Sarah Heckler Design, for about almost 10 years now. My daughter's 9. And so that's really how I got into interior design. And now I work here in Charleston, but not limited to. I do have clients in other states as well. The den is where we love to hang out. My husband and I watch our shows in here every night. I would say this is probably the coziest room in our house. To give that cozy feel, we added this textured grass cloth wallpaper. So all the rooms in our house are painted except for this room. And I think just having this added texture gives a room so much more warmth and coziness. And in this room, we also have a fireplace that's a brick fireplace. In the other rooms, they're all tile and wood. And in here, you have this dark Carolina brick. During our construction to the house, we had noticed that over time, the house had gone through many different hands. And the joinery of the brick it did not look good and it was not authentic to the home. So we had a mason come in and do what's called a sloppy joint. And that is what is joining these bricks together now. And that is what they would have done back in the 1800s. So the other feature of the fireplace that we did not love was it had a white block, plain painted mantle. And it just did not feel authentic to the home. So we had this log sourced from a 1700s cabin, I think in North Carolina, but we had a woodworker bring it down and finish it to fit the fireplace. And one of the cool little things on here is this wormhole that comes down the front, and it just has so much character, nail holes, wormholes, splits in the wood, and I think adding this has completely transformed the fireplace in here to feel like they would have originally had it with the home. I'm embarrassed to admit this, but it's so hot here, we've never ran one of our fireplaces. We also have more bookcases here in our den, as well as the dining room. But we have a lot of knickknacks and things I can point out to you. This is funny. I actually love, my husband has this old head and he puts when he makes his calls, he takes his phone and he connects it to this headpiece and he rests it there, which I think is hilarious. This carved piece of porcelain up here, I mentioned the artist to you earlier. Her name's Maria White, and she is a local porcelain potter, and she hand carved that little bowl, which you can put a candle in. Different things to an old cigar box that was my husband's father's, shell that you might find somewhere here in Charleston, a lightsaber from Disney World, different pieces of random art. If you come over here on the other side of the fireplace, we have the other bookcase with lots of other funny things. I don't know, I always love this too. It's a Stay Puft Marshmallow Man from Ghostbusters, or these cool funky candles. They're a pair of legs and you can light them. Some little sculptures are pictures of our kids, a huge piece of coral. We live at the beach. I try to include a little bit of elements that are coastal, even though this house is not that traditional, what you would think of coastal home. I would say it's more coastal military. This is another photograph that we've collected over the years. It is scenic with the ocean and cool vintage car. I think, again, something appropriate for living at the beach here. We try to bring a little bit of those elements in. Over here, you'll see this vintage Eames chair and ottoman. This was a piece that was given to my husband from his father as well. So we like to keep these pieces around. They're comfortable, they last forever, and this is a piece original from the 1950s. There are so many doors in this room. We of course have the sliding doors to come into the room, but then we have 2 sets of double doors, and this door would have been the exterior door to the house at a certain point that would have led you down to the side porch. But at a certain point, they've enclosed the porch on the side of this house, and now it is an air-conditioned space. So it's just a funky, cool feature to have a room where every single wall is covered in doors except for the fireplace. We did work to this house. It was move-in ready when we came here, but as we lived here, we started to see things that needed to change for us to feel like we could live in an old house, but yet have a more modern living situation. The house is very traditional in its layout: formal living room, formal dining room, family room, and the kitchen was off to the back of the house, which is not integrated in with your living spaces. And we knew that we were gonna have young kids, and how are we gonna see our kids play in their playroom if I'm cooking dinner and trying to move on with my life, and I have no idea where my kids are, unless they're in the kitchen with me, bothering me. But anyway, so we did have to do a major renovation, which we did during 2020. We did an addition on the house. Actually, I'm sitting in the room right now where we added on to the house. We added this family fun playroom area to our kitchen, and made it more of a open living kitchen floor plan. We hired an architect here. His name's Beau Clowney, and he is well known for working on historic houses as well as new homes. We came up with some ideas. We gave back enclosed porches, which are another key feature to this house. It has full wraparound porches that they would have used back in the 1800s, early 1900s, when there was no air conditioning. It provides shade and keeps the house cool during the summer months, which is very hot here in Charleston in South Carolina. So that was definitely necessary. So we worked with the town. We gave the porches back. We reinstated them to the original way they would have been back when the house was built. They're open air porches now. They wrap around the house, and we added on to the back of the house where the kitchen is. Welcome into our kitchen. We did the bulk of our renovation in 2020 in the kitchen. The majority of our time is spent here in the kitchen. I think for a lot of people it is. You hang out here, you eat here, you hang out with friends, you socialize, you party. We're here a lot. We cook 3 meals a day. We cook a lot in our house, so we're always in our kitchen. We cooked a lot in New York. I think we were one of the few families in New York that cooked all the time and didn't get carry out every night. But we love to cook salmon, steak. My husband grills a lot. We always eat together. We eat together as a family, not every night, but most nights. And so we're always in the kitchen. So we have a marble countertop on our kitchen. I know a lot of people do get worried about marble countertops and staining and things like that. We have not had any issues, and we cook a lot. I think the primary thing that people get worried about when they say staining, it's something from my world that's called etching. Etching is when the stone has been, the polish on the stone has been removed in an area, and you only see that in certain lighting and if you're looking at the countertop at certain angles, and it's something that just doesn't bother me. If you are in a working kitchen that you're using all of the time, it's almost adding character. It's like buying unlacquered brass. Our faucet over here is unlacquered brass. All these things here are unlacquered brass. This is hammered copper. These are living finishes that change depending upon the cleaning that's done to them, the polishing. The air exposure alone changes brass. I love to see the little speckled, blemishes on the brass. It adds character, and there's so much character in our house, it just makes sense. One other thing you can see in here is this beam right here, the choice to not have painted this. We added shiplap, which makes it feel more modern in today's world. They would not have had that back then. But again, you have this juxtaposition of what was and what is now. This beam right here goes up and across the ceiling. That is a structural beam to the house that's supporting the ceiling. And that is another example of what was originally built here, and we left it exposed and unpainted so you could see that. In the kitchen, we have this kind of quarter half of the kitchen where it's a lower ceiling height, and you come in over here and the ceiling drops up or goes up about, I don't know, 1.5 feet. And that also tells a story. I wasn't here for that story, but at some point, one of the owners decided they wanted a larger, grander kitchen. And there was probably a wall here. And they removed that wall, but they wanted to keep the ceiling, that precious stamped tin ceiling, intact. So you have that ceiling here, and then it goes up and you continue on. We preserved that, and then the wall was taken down at a certain point to enlarge the kitchen for today's modern living. During the renovation, we also wanted to change out some of the lighting that was here earlier. Again, you see this drawback to some black accents or gray. We put these almost like cafe style sconces on the wall to add extra light for the countertop in here. And then over here, we did the same thing with a chandelier that has, I think, like 20 light bulbs in it to just brighten up the whole kitchen. I love the use of a grand statement piece for a vase on a kitchen island. This was actually a vase that my husband gave me for Valentine's Day. And I think it's so cool. It's glass, it's ribbed, it's ombre, it's dark, it's light, it has a lot of detail. And then I can go out and forage branches from the yard and fill it with that and have a huge kind of living green thing here in the kitchen, which adds so much life. Here you'll see a huge cabinet. We had to add this because the kitchen itself doesn't have a ton of cabinetry. So this is almost like a china cabinet. We keep all of our dishes, kids' cups, plates, everything that we use primarily in the kitchen is here. We have floating shelves in the kitchen, so we do not have a ton of cabinet space. So this was definitely necessary for everyday living. Next to the cabinet, you'll see this really cool, bright colored, large painting. This was done by a friend of ours who's an artist named Gonzalo. He is from Uruguay. I don't know, I just think this is so grand and big. It's a statement piece in the room. It's fun. We have kids, we entertain, and it just adds color and life into the room. Behind the painting is, you'll see this kind of brick wall piece here. So originally this was where you would have had a wood burning stove. Back in the late 1800s, they would cook their food here. And that's also why you see, my kids love to point this out, which I think is hilarious. They think we have a paper plate hanging on the wall above the painting. It is not a paper plate. It is tin. It's a tin piece that's used to cover an element of the old burning stove that was here. But now it just adds something cool and funky to the kitchen. It's a conversation piece. We decorated our home primarily with our furnishings that we brought from New York. I would say we have a bit more of a modern style with mid-century mixed in and a lot of antiques, as well as new furnishings or custom furnishings that we had made to fit our apartment and now our home here. We weren't sure that our furnishings were gonna fit this style of this house because it does have a very specific look. But I do love the look of modern furnishings mixed with an old, ornate home. I think that the juxtaposition of those two things, modern and old, gives a sense of balance. And you'll see those as we walk through the house. Now I'm gonna take you into the sunroom. The sunroom is connected to our kitchen. This was an exterior wall here. So before our renovation, this was the wall to the house with a door that would open up and go to our old pool that we had. So through our renovation process, they blew out this wall and then added this room onto our kitchen. This is where all the light is primarily coming from. So our goal with this room was to make it feel like the outside was coming in. All three walls around are all glass windows. The light comes pouring in on this side of the house in the afternoon, which is amazing. So it's rarely ever dark here. One of the things that I can show you is our pool is off the back side of the house here. So you also have a view of the pool. Speaking of bringing the outside in, this is the room where we keep all of our plants. This tree over here is a fiddly fig tree that we got more than 15 years ago. So he is thriving and alive here in the corner of this room because he is just soaking up all of the light. And we gave him a pot that's kind of yellowish color to add a little pop of light in here. We call him Mr. Tree, that's his name. Mr. Tree made the move with us from New York. The movers were a little worried about that. They did not guarantee Mr. Tree would survive the move, but Mr. Tree did. He survived, and now he's better than ever right here in this corner of the room with all the light just soaking on him. On the credenza is this incredible, incredible butterfly dome. I had mentioned earlier, my friend and artist Dawn creates these domes. They're 19th century domes. The glass is huge. This is one of her largest pieces, and she's filled it with white and black speckled butterflies. They're real butterflies that are preserved, and she does these creations and makes them feel like they're flying all around the glass dome. The dome is an antique piece, so again, it feels authentic to the home, and it has a lot of character when you look at the details. We have my kids' little plants on the credenza, and next to it are this kind of cool stacking stool set. There's some blue. We decided to get something with color and oak, mix the colors together, tie it back to the credenza, and also it's fun because you can use this as extra seating for when we have guests. They kind of just come apart. You stack them, and it adds extra seating at the table when we have friends over. And the same woodworker who did those is actually a German woodworker, Stottmann. They built this bench that we have here. On our bench is Fuki. Fuki is our bonsai tree. My husband gave me this. It was another Valentine gift, actually. And Fuki is, I think, 27 years old approximately now. It's a really old bonsai tree, and we take really good care of it. And clearly, Fuki also loves to be by the light. So this is a cool feature in this room. We were trying to figure out how to solve this. This was the exterior window on the outside of the house before the renovation. So before the renovation, I would have been standing on my porch, on a small porch on the outside of the house. This window goes to our laundry room. But now that this is a room where we live and hang out, we didn't want to get rid of the original window because it's cool, but we also did not want to look directly into our laundry room. So we found this cool glass that has a motif, like a relief print on the glass that kind of disguises. You can let the light through, but you cannot see through it and see my, hanging laundry. But it is from an era, this pattern, I would say, is a historic pattern. And I think that also complements the house itself and something that they would have used when the home was built. A couple tips I could suggest for decorating your home would be, for us, working with the home. Let the home speak for itself sometimes, especially with a historical home. We never tried to take any of the innate character and structure away from the home. We always worked with those things. Everything we did during our construction phase was actually to bring it back to its original state and preserve the incredible historic nature of the house. I think through furnishing the home, you can add in your personal style, but not fighting with the architecture of the home itself is really important. So here's our backyard. We added this during renovation as well. I mean, the yard was here, but before renovation, we had this 1990s vinyl liner. I called it the Mickey Mouse head shaped pool. It was kind of tearing down the sides. We knew it had to go and it needed to be either repaired or something new needed to come. So when we decided to add this glass room, windowed room onto our house, we knew that that would be kind of encroaching on where the pool was. So we hired a landscape architect, and they came back and redid a whole plan for the backyard. We did all new plants, bushes, shrubs. They dug a big hole, they filled in the old pool, they pulled it out, and we put in this awesome, big, modern but traditional shape rectangular pool. We lined the patio with travertine stone. It just felt right with the home. We love to host our friends, our kids, friends, everyone back here. They swim all summer long, and we have a blast in 100-degree weather in South Carolina. So on the other side of the yard, we have our garage. We come down these little stairs here, and this is like a little side yard where my son loves to play soccer. He's really into soccer. So this was kind of a gravel pathway that led to the front of the house, and our landscape architect helped us to make this a better use of space. The grass is brown right now because we're in early spring here and it hasn't turned green yet, but we do get luscious green grass back here, and it's perfect for kicking the soccer ball around. So over here on the side of the house is kind of a funky little feature. We have this bulkhead, which reminds me of Wizard of Oz when she was going underground to get away from the tornado. But this goes underneath our house. Back in the 1800s when they built this house, their thinking was that if a hurricane or flooding were to come, since we're on the coast, that we should dig out underneath the house. So there is about a 7-foot height under the home. So if water were to ever come up here and rush through during a hurricane, then the thought would be that all the water would go under the home and not in the home, or could at least be displaced temporarily underneath the house. So this bulkhead opens up, and you can kind of go down these old creepy stairwell that leads you into this dirt cement. It's sort of a basement, but you can't use it. But it's the dug out basement from underneath the house. Home means to me a place where we can come and relax, hang out with our kids, and really enjoy our space. I'm a homebody. I think my husband is a homebody. We really love to hang out here. I want to be happy, whether my house is 1,000 square feet or 10,000 square feet. I want to make it feel like it's mine. I want it to have my personality shine through, my husband's personality. I want it to function so that we can live with our kids and not feel that everything is sacred and precious, but some things are too. So I think that we have a good balance of that, and home for me is a place where I can feel safe and relax and enjoy my space.
Thanks for watching. Be sure to go to homeworthy.com for exclusive content, shopping guides, and so much more.